Okay, I'm going to get started with this next topic of what is merit to help you guys understand what the Buddha taught on this topic. This is something that you're going to need to understand in order to gradually make your way towards enlightenment. So I'm going to help you guys to understand this. And then, as always, I'll open up for questions as we go. You guys can ask any and all questions that you like. So what merit is this is the readiness and willingness to take action to frequently give something more than is strictly required in any given situation, such as your time, effort, energy, and resources, without any expectation of anything in return, in order to help other people to get access to the teachings of the Buddha. So the Buddha taught generosity, to give and share with the people around you. This is actually training your mind to let go, because remember, the number one cause that's causing the discontentedness is the craving, desire, attachment. The mind's holding on and craving permanence. So all the teachings of the Buddha are training you to help you get rid of craving, desire, attachment, where you're holding on to things. So the Buddha teaches generosity as part of his teachings, where you're going to need to practice generosity with plenty of people around you. But part of the people that you might choose to practice generosity towards is the people who are maybe choosing to learn the teachings of the Buddha, that this is the way to help other people to get access to the teachings. And this has been going on for 2,500 years, where people have been giving and sharing their time, effort, energy, and resources to be able to help other people get access to the teachings. So, for example, the land that we're sitting on right now at one time was owned by a Thai person, and they donated it so that the temple could be built here, because they would have received a certain amount of benefit with the teachings of the Buddha. And they were like, hey, I'd like other people to get access to these teachings too. So let me donate the land and make it available for other people. And they donated their land. And this temple was built over 500 years ago. So then after the land was donated, there would have been people donating supplies or their effort and time to build all these different buildings. So everything you see around you is a practice of merit by somebody. So whether it's this microphone that I'm talking on, this mic stand, the projector, the camera, the air conditioning, the carpet, the meditation cushions, the chairs, the water, every single thing that you see in a temple complex is pretty much an offering from somebody that they've decided, hey, I receive benefit from these teachings, and I'd like to see other people get access to these teachings too. It's important that when I'm teaching this topic about merit, that you understand that the Buddha was a prince destined to become a king. He was the firstborn son in a royal family. So he was already rich. He was already wealthy. And then he walked away from that. Because sometimes when you teach topics like this, students might think, based on their experiences nowadays, where they see people enriching themselves, that maybe that's what the Buddha was trying to do by teaching people to make offerings, to have people give him offerings. But during his lifetime, he was a prince destined to become a king. He was already rich and wealthy. He walked away from that. He went into a life of homelessness, where he was actually wearing rag robes. He was accepting donations of food, clothing, shelter, and medical care from his students, but he wouldn't accept anything of value. So if people offered him gold or silver or something like this, that was the currency at the time, he would never accept that. Or if they offered him land or animals, some people even offered him slaves and women as well. He wouldn't accept those kinds of things as offerings. He would only accept food, clothing, shelter, and medical care, just things to be able to sustain his life. That's the only thing he was interested in, is to be able to sustain his life. So he didn't teach to practice merit in order to enrich himself. He taught it in order to be able to help you to be able to train your mind to let go of craving, desire, attachment, because when you're practicing generosity, it's going to train your mind to let go, and also to help other people get access to the teachings, because that's the only way people would get access to the teachings, is if we made them available to people. So at one point in time, when I first started teaching here, this room was like really run down. It was really old and dilapidated. This building was built in 1972. And when I came here and I first started teaching here, they invited me to come teach. It was a really run down room. And I suspect that they hadn't touched it since 1972, the way that it looked at that time. And then as I was teaching here for a while, students were finding all this value in the teachings, right? And slowly but surely, students asked if they could start upgrading the facility. I used to have this really old beat up projector that people couldn't even barely see. And then students were like, hey, how about if we get a new projector for you? And I was like, yeah, sure, that's great. So they bought me this new projector. They bought you this new projector so that you could actually see what it is that I'm teaching. And then people eventually, bought cameras and carpets, and they actually completely remodeled the entire facility. About a year ago, we went through a complete remodel. This is all merit because people were interested in having a comfortable environment for you to be able to come and learn and understand these teachings. So this is all merit. The Buddha taught that it would be wise to practice giving and sharing with people who are in one of the 4 stages of enlightenment or practicing to get into one of the 4 stages of enlightenment. If you can imagine, during the lifetime of the Buddha, there were countless people who were studying with him, and not everybody was learning and practicing the teachings closely. So when he taught about merit, he taught people to make offerings to people who were practicing the teachings closely, because that would ensure that the teachings would continue in the world. So in this next part here, I have a little diagram for you to be able to understand what merit is, because you're going to need to practice generosity with all kinds of people in order to be able to get to enlightenment, whether it's your parents, your siblings, your coworkers, your neighbors, even people you don't know, just random people that you've never met before. You're going to need to practice generosity with various people. And there's multiple ways to practice generosity. It's not just giving money. So I'm going to give you guys some examples of this as we go. So you're going to need to practice generosity with many different people. But you can ask yourself this question: was this an offering to a teacher to support the continued sharing of the Buddha's teachings to help others attain enlightenment? If the answer is no, you're actually experiencing the benefits of eliminating craving, desire, attachment from your mind, because you're training to give and share without any expectation of anything in return, and that's helping you. Even making an offering to an animal, it's helping your mind to let go. And you're also generating this wholesome Kamma to be able to progress towards enlightenment through generating the elimination of selfishness, right? Because that's what the Buddha is teaching you, is to get to this point where you're practicing generosity. But if you answer this question yes, that it was to help other people get access to the teachings of the Buddha, you're still experiencing those benefits of eliminating craving, desire, attachment from the mind, and you're still helping yourself to progress closer to enlightenment through eliminating your own selfishness. But there's this other benefit of helping others to gain access to the teachings, and that's what we call merit. So this is wholesome Kamma that is generated through the practice of generosity by helping other people get access to the teachings. Okay? Here's a teaching from the Buddha, his words, where he's sharing with you how to practice generosity with people who are in one of the 4 stages of enlightenment or practicing for the realization of one of the 4 stages of enlightenment. Because as I said, during the lifetime of the Buddha, there were core people that were practicing the teachings closely that were around the Buddha, but there were people on the outer edges that weren't really practicing the teachings so closely, but they were still learning from the Buddha. And he was encouraging people to support these people that were actually practicing the teachings closely. So here, I'll read this to you and then I'll help you with it. It's called An Unsurpassed Field of Merit for the World. Monks, these 8 persons are worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of reverential salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world. What 8? The stream enterer, the one practicing for the realization of the fruit of stream entry, the once returner, the one practicing for the realization of the fruit of once returning, the non-returner, the one practicing for the realization of the fruit of non-returning, the arahant, the one practicing for the realization of the fruit of arahantship. These 8 persons, monks, are worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of reverential salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world. Okay, so I'm going to pause here and just kind of talk about this and kind of remind you guys of something I taught on Monday. If you remember back to Monday, I was teaching you the 4 stages of enlightenment. That's what the Buddha is referencing here. Stream enterer, once returner, non-returner, and arahant. Your mind is actually enlightened when you're in that 4th stage of enlightenment, and we refer to it as an arahant or an enlightened being because they fully purified the mind of the 10 fetters. But then there's these other stages as well. And then there's people who are practicing to get into one of those stages where they haven't quite gotten into that stage yet, but they're making their way towards it. So the Buddha is saying these are the types of people that you would like to make offerings to, because in order for them to get into those stages of enlightenment, they would have had to cultivate a certain amount of wisdom, and they would have had to train their mind to a certain degree. And now when you're coming together with them in order to be able to make them offerings, you have the opportunity to cultivate that same wisdom to be able to progress on the path. And the Buddha makes that more clear down here. He says, the four practicing the way, the four established in the fruit. This is the upright community, composed in wisdom and virtuous behavior. For people intent on sacrifice, for living beings seeking merit, making merit that ripens in the acquisitions. What is given to the community bears great fruit. Okay, so what he's talking about up here, he's saying the four practicing the way, the four established in the fruit. This is the upright community. This is how he used to refer to his community of students. He would call them the straight community or the upright community. You might think that during the lifetime of the Buddha, he was the only one teaching and everybody was studying with him. This isn't actually true, right? Because if you lived during the lifetime of a Buddha, you'd probably like to learn directly from a Buddha, right? But not everybody knows who a Buddha is, because a Buddha doesn't go around performing a bunch of miracles trying to convince people that they're an actual Buddha. So there were other people that were teaching, and they were claiming that it was their teachings that lead to enlightenment. So when the Buddha was teaching, he knew that it was his teachings that led to enlightenment, and those other teachers' teachings don't lead to enlightenment. So he was referring to his community as the upright community or straight community, who are composed in wisdom and virtuous behavior. They have this wisdom of how to get to enlightenment, and their moral conduct is such that it's very wholesome comparative to what other people were maybe learning. And then he says, for people intent on sacrifice, for living beings seeking merit, making merit that ripens in the acquisitions. What is given to the community bears great fruit. What he's talking about here about making merit that ripens in the acquisitions is that by you making a gift to somebody who's in one of the four stages of enlightenment or practicing for the realization of the four stages, you're coming in contact with somebody that you can now ask questions to be able to understand the path. So merit is actually your ability to come in contact with someone who's very wise about the teachings, and now you can glean that wisdom. That's what he means by making merit that ripens in the acquisitions. The acquisitions is you actually acquiring one of the four stages of enlightenment. Because if you were just haphazardly making offerings to people and you didn't really know whether or not they're in one of the four stages of enlightenment or if they're well developed in their practice, you're not actually coming into contact with somebody who's actually going to be able to help you in your journey to enlightenment. So he taught you to be able to observe the person's mind, to be able to determine whether or not it would be wise for you to make offerings to someone, which we'll talk about here in a moment. So you would like to come in contact with someone to be able to now cultivate wisdom. So there's nothing mystical or magical by you just giving a gift to an enlightened being. There's nothing mystical or magical that's happening. It's that you're coming in contact with somebody that you can now ask questions to and get help to be able to progress yourself. That's what it means by ripening in the acquisitions. The true merit is you actually coming together and learning and understanding the wisdom that it takes to progress on the path to enlightenment. Then he says, what is given to the community bears great fruit. So when a student is making an offering to a teacher, that's an offering to the community. And what the Buddha teaches is that for individuals who are receiving offerings, that you would use a certain portion of those offerings in order to be able to sustain your own life. But then as a teacher, you would be giving back to the community. So any offering that is made to a teacher, it's really an offering to the community. And now that teacher is kind of using a certain portion of whatever is being offered to sustain their life. But then you should see classes and courses and retreats. You should see teachings coming back to you. You should see a nice facility to be able to learn and grow and develop. That's what's coming back to the community. There's been situations in Thailand where this isn't actually occurring. It's very rare, but it happened several years ago where there was an individual who was teaching. They were ordained practitioner, where actually they weren't really teaching too much, but they were receiving donations and they were pocketing the money. They were going around and buying Fendi bags and Gucci sunglasses, and they were riding around on private airplanes and stuff like this. They were an ordained practitioner. And of course, they were putting it all over Instagram and Facebook and all this kind of stuff. And the Thai people found out about this, and they actually sent the police to go arrest this person. And this person had escaped, and they went to the USA. They actually put out an Interpol warrant for this individual. They had the U.S. police go arrest them, and they arrested them and extradited them back to Thailand. And they went through the court system, and they were found guilty of fraud and embezzlement, and they were sentenced to 20 years in prison. So the Thai people take this kind of stuff very seriously, that if somebody is receiving offerings from a community, that there should be offerings coming back to the community so the community can be learning and growing and developing. That you shouldn't be, just pocketing the money and kind of self-absorbed. Where in some countries, you don't necessarily see that. Some places you can see people that are using teachings like this to maybe enrich themselves, and that's just kind of the way it happens. Where here in Thailand, that's not the way that it actually happens, because people understand that offerings made to the temple are for the community. It's of course that teacher needs to support themselves to be able to sustain their life, but then there should be offerings coming back to the community. And that's what the Buddha teaches you here. So in those situations where you see those things that people are maybe enriching themselves and not actually sharing teachings with the community, and things aren't coming back to the community. The Buddha taught about this during his lifetime too, because it happens now. It was happening during his lifetime too. And he gives this great little analogy where essentially you might not even consider that person to be a monk who was buying Fendi bags and Gucci sunglasses and riding around on private airplanes. This story that the Buddha shares, he says, imagine if he is a cow and he's walking across the field during rainy season, and the soft earth, he's leaving behind his hoof prints as a cow. And behind him, there's a donkey that is putting its hooves in the same hoof prints as the cow. And the donkey is thinking, as it's walking behind the cow and putting its hooves in the same hoof prints, I'm a cow, I'm a cow, I'm a cow, I'm a cow. And the Buddha says the fact that this donkey is walking behind the cow and it thinks it's a cow and it's putting its hoof prints in the same hoof prints as the cow, does that make the donkey a cow? Well, the answer is no, of course not. It doesn't make the donkey a cow. So just because someone's shaving their hair and wearing orange robes isn't what makes them a monk. Just because somebody's wearing white clothes and shaving their hair doesn't make them a wholesome teacher, right? It's their actions, and what is it that they're choosing to do? What decisions are they choosing to make? And that's what the Buddha actually teaches you, that whenever you're doing anything in the world, he teaches you to practice what's called discernment. Discernment is wise decision making. Every single thing that you do needs to have discernment. That's how you actually get to enlightenment. You cultivate wisdom about the natural law of Kamma, and now you practice discernment, making wise decisions. So this includes any kind of generosity that you practice, that you would like to practice discernment. That if you're going to make an offering to a teacher or a temple or somebody like this, you would like to use your wise decision making. So here the Buddha is giving you guidance about making an offering to someone who's in one of the 4 stages of enlightenment, or practicing for the realization of the 4 stages of enlightenment. But early in your journey to enlightenment, you might not actually be able to tell whether someone's in one of the 4 stages of enlightenment or not. So the Buddha knew that too. So he gave you a teaching on that. He said, if you're not sure, if you don't know how to determine whether someone's in one of the 4 stages of enlightenment, what you do is you look at the quality of their mind. If they're muddle-minded, meaning they're lacking concentration and focus and clarity in their mind, then he says this person isn't necessarily practicing his teachings very closely. Because remember, he discovered these 10 individual pollutions in the mind, and when you have those pollutions in your mind, you're going to have a muddled mind. You're going to lack concentration, focus, and clarity. But for someone who's practiced his teachings closely, those pollutions will be uprooted and eliminated out of the mind, and now you'll see focus, concentration, clarity with their mind. And this is the type of person that the Buddha suggested for you to make offerings to be able to support the teachings coming into the world. So here's some words of the Buddha, and I have some other words of the Buddha for you on generosity as well. But before we get into that, let's just talk about this kind of more generally and more broadly. The practice of generosity is helping you eliminate craving, desire, attachment from the mind, which is the cause of discontentedness and the cause of this continuous rebirth. So the Buddha teaches you all of his teachings, whether it's meditation or any other aspect of his teachings, it's training your mind to let go. So you're not holding on and craving permanence. It's helping you, generosity is helping you eliminate the stain of selfishness. This is actually the words of the Buddha, where he calls this selfishness in the mind, he calls it a stain, right? Because that's typically what we do when we have craving, desire, attachment in our mind, is that we kind of hold on to things very tightly and we're unwilling to share with others. And the Buddha calls this a stain. This is kind of how an animal functions, right? An animal will hoard its food and it'll be unwilling to share it with other people, or other beings. But human beings, we are not animals. We're actually human beings. We are different than an animal. We can evolve to a higher consciousness where we're willing to share our food, for example, or we're willing to share our resources, things of that nature. So that's what it is to be on the path to enlightenment, is you're becoming a better and better human being. Right? You're no longer staying in these animalistic instincts that we have in the unenlightened state as a human being. We're evolving to become a better and better human being. So human beings can actually practice generosity, where we're giving and sharing and we are not selfish. So as you develop confidence in the Buddha, his teachings, the community, your own ability to get to enlightenment in your teacher, you might decide that you would like to support other people to be able to get to enlightenment by making the teachings available. And that's where someone might choose to practice giving and sharing to help other people get access to the teachings. Remember, you don't eliminate doubt through blind belief. You eliminate it through investigation of the teachings. And as you're investigating the teachings and you see that they're actually working in their improving your mind and your life, you might decide you'd like to see other people get access to these teachings too. There's a big misunderstanding related to merit that you might actually see depending on where you go in order to practice merit, that as you're making offerings, if you notice somebody that gestures towards these little urns of water and they ask you to pour out these little urns of water while they're chanting and you're making your offering, this is a misunderstanding of merit. You'll see this even here in Thailand, that if you go and you make an offering to a teacher or an ordained practitioner, they will typically have you get this little urn of water and they will pour it out, or you will pour it out as they're chanting. This is called Guat Nam in Thai. That's the way we refer to it. What this is they think that when you make your offering, that if you pour out this water, it's actually transferring the benefits of your merit to somebody else, typically your dead relatives. Well, this is a really kind thought. It's a really warm thought, that the idea that you can donate your merit to somebody else, but it's not based in true reality at all. That the Buddha never taught this. It's not actually possible for you to transfer the benefits of your merit to somebody else, because you guys remember from the last talk that I just gave about the natural law of Kamma, that it's your Kamma, that whenever you make decisions, it's your Kamma. You can't transfer that to somebody else, because what merit is wholesome Kamma. That's what it is. It's based in generosity, and you're producing wholesome Kamma, and you can't transfer that to somebody else. So if you understand what the benefits of merit is that it's enhancing the quality of your mind, because it's training your mind to let go. You can't actually transfer that to somebody else. So whenever you see rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, prayer, and things like this associated with the teachings of the Buddha, those aren't the teachings of the Buddha. He never taught any kind of rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, or prayer. So this is a big misunderstanding that you'll see in some communities where they're pouring out this water, thinking they're transferring their merit to somebody else. But if you understand the benefits of merit, which is you're enhancing the quality of your mind to be able to let go and eliminate craving, desire, attachment, and you're getting wisdom by coming in contact with someone that you can now ask questions to, you can't actually transfer that to somebody else through any kind of ceremony, ritual, or anything like that. Okay, so you'll see those things from time to time. Whether you choose to do it or not, that's a choice for you to make, but just understand that it's not something that's actually possible. The Buddha never taught that. Here's some teachings from the Buddha on if you ever decide you would like to make an offering. That he's talking to a female here because there was a female who asked him a question about how to make an offering, and he answered her in this way. He talked about purification of the offering, and he said that before you make an offering, that it would be important for your mind to be joyful. And then in the act of giving, that it would be important for your mind to be calm and confident. And then after giving, your mind should still be joyful. The reason why he taught this is that prior to giving, if your mind is joyful, that means you've put some thought into your offering and you feel good about the offering that you're going to give, right? In the act of giving, that you can be calm and confident. Because if you're making an offering to someone and your mind's all shaken up when you're making that offering, that's because you're probably putting yourself below that person and your mind's all shaken up. But instead, you would like to think of everybody as being equal. And then your mind is joyful after giving, meaning you don't have remorse after you've given. Because if you've given, say, maybe you didn't think about your offering of what you were going to give, your time, effort, energy, or resources. And now after giving, you have remorse. Like, oh my gosh, I gave too much. Why did I give so much? Now I can't even take care of myself. I don't have food for myself, or can't pay my rent, or something like that. That's because you didn't put some thought into your offering before giving, and now you're having remorse after you're giving. Or let's just say you gave a gift to somebody and you were like, oh, I'm so selfish, I'm so stingy, why did I not give more? This is the mind having remorse. So you would like to be joyful before giving and after giving as well. Okay, so that's going to protect your mind. Then in terms of the type of person to make an offering to, the Buddha talks about someone who is free of craving, anger, and ignorance. If someone's free of craving, anger, and ignorance, that means they're enlightened. That's what that means, right? But then he also says people who are practicing for the removal of craving, anger, and ignorance, someone who's on their way, right? And you can see that they're actively making efforts to move closer and closer to enlightenment. So he's saying this is the type of person to make an offering to. So he oftentimes teaches you from these different angles. The first one that I showed you, he talks about the 4 stages of enlightenment as someone who's practicing to get into one of those 4 stages. Here, he's talking about the removal of craving, anger, and ignorance, or they're free from craving, anger, and ignorance. You can see another teaching where he talks about just looking at their mind and seeing whether or not they're muddle-minded or not. So he oftentimes teaches from these different angles so that you'll understand one of these different angles depending on your level of understanding of the teachings. During the lifetime of the Buddha, he was asked at one time to kind of boil his teachings down. Somebody, I mean, they didn't say it that way, but essentially what they said is, okay, Mr. Buddha, you have all these teachings and all these comprehensive detailed teachings. Can you just boil it down for me? Like, what can I be doing on a day-to-day basis in order to be able to improve my mind and improve what it is that I'm doing on a daily basis, right? Well, the Buddha says generosity, moral conduct, and meditation. These are the 3 things to be doing on a daily basis in order to improve your practice and get you closer and closer to enlightenment. Okay, so generosity is the giving and sharing of more than is strictly required in any given situation without any expectation of anything in return. And this is a daily practice. You would like to be doing this frequently, not just towards temples or teachers, but with people around you, right? You like to share your time, effort, energy, and resources without any expectation of anything in return. And you would like to do this daily. And what I suggest you do is make it easy for yourself. Like say you're at the market and you're buying yourself some mangoes. Well, maybe you know that your neighbor likes bananas. It'll take you extra 30 seconds to a minute to toss some bananas in the bag and just pay for those. You're already there at the market, right? It doesn't take much time. You don't have to go way out of your way to practice generosity. Or say you're going into 7-Eleven to buy yourself a chocolate bar. Well, buy an extra one, or 2 or 3. You don't even maybe know who you're going to give it to that day, but you're going to encounter somebody that you can give it to, right? So instead of just buying one for yourself, it'll take you an extra second or 2 to pick up another one and pay for that as well. And now you've got a way to practice generosity during your day, right? Or say you're going into a store and you see there's someone behind you and you can just hold the door for them. That takes you extra 5 seconds to let them go into the store first. But remember, it's without any expectation of anything in return. Because if you're standing there expecting them to say thank you and they don't say thank you, you're going to get angry or frustrated or annoyed. But it's your own mind that's doing that because you're craving permanence. You're wanting everybody that walks through to say thank you. So you can do all these kinds of things, and this can incorporate generosity into your day-to-day life, where you're sharing your time, effort, energy, and resources. If there's certain things that you see your mind's discontent about, whether it's pleasant feelings, painful feelings, or neither painful nor pleasant, you can actually practice generosity with those things, and it'll actually help you to be able to train your mind to let go. So say, for example, you take your clothes out of a washing machine and you see they're ripped and torn, and you get frustrated and angry about that. Well, you know that you're attached to your clothes. You're craving for them to be permanent, right? So now what you do is you start practicing some generosity with your clothing. You start giving it away to people. Maybe you donate it or things like this, right? So you can do that. You can even do that with things that you get pleasant feelings about. At one point, my son was really attached to popcorn. He had a big craving for popcorn. This boy was eating popcorn like it was going out of style. I mean, he was popping popcorn like crazy, right? So one of the things that I did is I suggested to him that he make some popcorn, and then he bag it up, and then he'd go around the village and hand it out to his friends and give his friends some popcorn. So that's what he did, is that he made his popcorn and he bagged it up and he went around and gave it out to some of his friends in the village. And this helped his mind to let go because he was getting all these pleasant feelings from the popcorn. Where now he still eats popcorn, he still enjoys popcorn, but it's not like it was for those first year or two. That first year or two, he was eating it like it was going out of style. I mean, every day he was eating some popcorn. So he was able to train his mind to let go through practicing generosity. So generosity is a key component to helping your mind to be able to let go. And you can do this where you see you're getting pleasant feelings, painful feelings, or neither painful nor pleasant feelings. You can practice generosity. Then there's moral conduct. The Buddha teaches you to do this on a daily basis, where you're improving your moral conduct, because there's a certain amount of unwholesome moral conduct that you have in the unenlightened state, and you'd like to improve that. When the Buddha was teaching, he would teach right view first, which is the Four Noble Truths, understanding that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. But the second thing that he would start teaching was to improve your moral conduct. He didn't even teach meditation as the second thing. He would teach moral conduct as the second thing, because it's kind of like if you're going to clean up all your unwholesome Kamma, which is what we were just talking about, well, you're not going to go clean up your unwholesome Kamma first. You got to shut down the unwholesome Kamma production, right? So if you've got a pipe that's an oil pipe and it's busted and it's spewing oil all over the world, you're not going to go clean up the mess on the floor first, because the mess on the floor is your old unwholesome Kamma. You're not going to go clean that up first. You're going to shut down the oil pipe, right? So it stops spewing oil all over the world, right? That's what you're doing when you're applying effort to improve your moral conduct, is that you're making sure that you're shutting down your unwholesome Kamma production, right? So now when you shut down that unwholesome Kamma production, then you clean up the mess on the floor, right? That's your old unwholesome Kamma coming back to you. So we would teach you to pay attention to right speech, right action, and right livelihood, and clean that up so that now you can shut down your unwholesome Kamma production. Then he encouraged you to practice meditation. This was on a daily basis, that you would be practicing your meditation on a regular basis. So this is what you do on a day-to-day basis in order to make your way closer and closer to enlightenment. You're still going to need to learn and practice all those other teachings that the Buddha shares, but generosity, moral conduct, and meditation are the things that you're doing on a daily basis, frequently. What you're going to notice is your frequency with these things is actually more important than the amount. So if it was a matter of giving $500 once a year to an orphanage, that's not going to be nearly as beneficial as giving $1 a day. Because $1 a day, you're having to let go more frequently, right? So if you're noticing you get really happy and excited when your bank account balance is up here, and then when it goes down here, you get sad and frustrated, you're attached to your money. And now you're going to need to start sharing it with the people around you. So you'd like to be doing that regularly, where you're letting go, letting go, letting go, letting go. This is why here in Thailand, if you go around to different stores and restaurants, you're going to see a lot of donation boxes in different places. That provides people the opportunity to let go. So if you're going to give, say, 100 baht a day, instead, you might break that up into 10 or 20 baht, and now you give 10 or 5 different times during your day, you're having to let go and let go and let go and let go. And this is actually more beneficial because the frequency is more important than the amount. And the same thing is true about meditation, that your frequency, if it was a matter of one meditation for 30 minutes or 2 for 15, the 2 for 15 is going to be more beneficial for you. So this is a daily practice of generosity, improving your moral conduct, and practicing meditation. But how could you ever get any of this wisdom if we didn't practice merit, right? Merit is how we actually make sure the teachings can continue into the world. So here's a teaching from the Buddha that I oftentimes share when I'm teaching this topic, because when I learned it, it was pretty impactful, and I like to share it with you guys. It's titled, "If Beings Knew the Results of Giving and Sharing." Monks, if beings knew, as I know, the results of giving and sharing, they would not eat without having given, nor would the stain of selfishness obsess them and take root in their minds. Even if it were their last bite, their last mouthful, they would not eat without having shared it, if there was someone to share it with. But because beings do not know, as I know, the results of giving and sharing, they eat without having given, and the stain of selfishness obsesses them and takes root in their minds. So what's the results of giving and sharing that the Buddha knows that other people do not know? Well, it's enlightenment. It's the peace and the joy of enlightenment. If beings knew that generosity is what leads to this peaceful and joyful mental state of enlightenment, they would not eat without having shared it, if there was someone to share it with, right? Because generosity is what's going to eliminate your craving, desire, attachment, along with other things too, but that's what's going to lead to this peace and joy. And if people could just taste that peace and joy of enlightenment, they wouldn't let anything stand in their way of getting to that peace and joy, right? So that's what he's saying here, is that if you knew how peaceful and how joyful the enlightened mental state is, and that it's generosity that leads to that, you would not eat without having shared it, if there was someone to share it with. Because oftentimes we kind of hoard our food in the unenlightened state. Where here in Asia, we tend to put the food in the middle and everybody shares it. Because if you're in a family of 4 or 6 or 8 people, you guys might not have enough resources for everybody to have a full meal and to feel full at the end of this meal. But if you put the food in the middle and everybody takes 2 or 3 spoonfuls and you put it on your plate and you eat that, and everybody's doing that, slowly but surely this food is going down. At the end of this meal, maybe we're not all full, but we've all had a little bit of food, right? So we share our food here in Asia. It usually goes in the middle and then everybody shares it. So in the West, we tend to not do that. It's tend to be my food, right? And we kind of hoard our food. So if you can share your food, this would be actually really helpful for your mind, because one of the things that an animal does is it's unwilling to share its food. And the unenlightened human mind functions oftentimes like an animal. So you're evolving to become a better and better human being. So if you go to the store and you get a bag of potato chips and you're amongst your friends, maybe you open the bag of potato chips and you send it around. And you're like, hey, would you guys like a potato chip? And maybe the bag goes all the way around and it comes back and there's 1 potato chip left. Well, just eat your 1 potato chip and then go get another bag. Right? They're not that expensive. And now you've been able to practice some generosity. So this would be helpful for you, that you keep this in mind to be able to share your food, because that's something that the mind typically hoards. You know, when we're children, we're actually taught to give and share with others, but we're not actually taught why. Right? So as a child, we're usually taught to share our toys and share our food and share other things like that. But then as we get older and we start accumulating our own resources and we had to work in order to get those, we tend to kind of hoard things, right? But you can understand why is it important to share, that you eliminate this selfishness and it trains your mind to let go, and it ultimately help you to eliminate discontentedness. So that's why the Buddha is teaching this. Here's a teaching from the Buddha. He says, gifts of teachings is superior than gifts of material things. Monks, there are these 2 kinds of gifts, a gift of material things and a gift of the teachings. Of these 2 kinds of gifts, this is supreme, a gift of the teachings. There are these 2 kinds of sharing, sharing of material things and sharing of the teachings. Of these 2 kinds of sharing, this is supreme, sharing of the teachings. There are these two kinds of assistance with material things and assistance with the teachings. Of these two kinds of assistance, this is supreme, assistance with the teachings. So what he's saying here is you could get somebody every material gift in the world that you could ever give them, essentially, but that pales in comparison to giving someone the gift of the teachings, because giving someone the gift of the teachings means that they can then actually get to enlightenment, where their mind's completely peaceful and joyful. They can eliminate all their anger, sadness, frustration, and other discontent feelings. That's the best gift that you could ever give to anybody. That's why I come here every day, to be able to share this gift with you that the Buddha taught of how to get to enlightenment, because it's the best gift that I could ever give you, is the gift of understanding how to actually get to enlightenment. So unfortunately, we can't really give when we're just learning the teachings. You can't necessarily really give the teachings. You can't give someone enlightenment, but you can make the teachings available to them. And that's what merit is doing, is you're helping to make the teachings available to others. Like, for example, if you could press button A and your parents and your family and siblings would be angry and bitter and hostile and harsh for the rest of their life, or you could press button B and they would be peaceful and joyful for the rest of their life, which button would you press, A or B? You'd press B? What would you guys press? You'd press B? Yeah, most of us would press button B, right? Unfortunately, it's not a button that we can press. That'd be lovely if it would be, right? But we can't press a button, but we can make the teachings available for people. And that's what merit does, is it helps to make the teachings available so people have the opportunity to be able to get access to them if that's what they choose. Okay, so here's one last teaching that I'll share with you guys on this topic, and then I'll just open up to whatever questions you guys have. But before I share this, let me just teach you guys what is a Brahmin, because sometimes people don't know what that is. During the lifetime of the Buddha, and even now, there's people called Brahmin. What these are people who are born into a certain family, and they're thought to be holy people if you're born into this family. During the lifetime of the Buddha, there was a very strong caste system in place, and 15% of society were considered to be Brahmin. And if you were born into this family, you were immediately considered to be a holy person. And now that's the person who does rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, and prayer on behalf of other people. All the rest of the community in the greater world was taught that you cannot improve your life. It is impossible for you to improve your life. The only way that you can improve your life is if you go to this Brahmin and you give them some money. And if you give them some money, they're going to do rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, and prayer on your behalf. And now your life is going to become better. So, of course, this isn't actually true. The Buddha saw that, and he understood that this was breeding corruption, right? Because you would go to this person and maybe you would say, oh, I'm having a lot of difficulties with my husband or my wife and my children. Can you help me? And they're like, yeah, sure. That'll be $5 and I'll do a ceremony for you. And then your life's going to get better, right? Well, now you'll go away and it's been a week or 2 or 3 or 4 and your life's not getting better. And now you'll come back and you'll say, hey, things are gotten worse. They haven't actually gotten better. And you're like, oh, that means you need to have another ceremony. That one's going to be $10 or $20 for me to do that ceremony for you. So this bred corruption. And just because you're born into a certain family doesn't mean that you're a holy person. It's your wisdom and your actions that determines that. So these Brahmin that were doing rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, and prayer, today we might refer to this person as a Hindu priest, that they would oftentimes come to the Buddha in order to learn with him, because even though they were doing rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, and prayer, they were also teaching just a little bit of moral conduct. So they would sometimes come to the Buddha to be able to learn that moral conduct. So here the Buddha is teaching his students. This is titled Mutual Support Between Monks, Brahmins, and Householders. Monks, Brahmins, and householders are very helpful to you. They provide you with the requisites of robes, alms food, lodgings, and medicines in time of sickness. And you monks are very helpful to Brahmins and householders as you teach them the teachings that are good in the beginning, the middle, and the end, with the correct meaning and wording, and you proclaim the spiritual life in its fulfillment and purity. Thus, monks, complete purity. Thus, monks, this spiritual life is lived with mutual support for the purpose of crossing the flood and making a complete end of discontentedness. So what he's talking about is this mutual support that's been in place ever since his lifetime, where students would support the teachings coming into the world, and then the teachers would then be able to support the students to be able to grow and develop in their life. And in this process, everybody's practicing generosity, because the teachers should be practicing in such a way that they don't have any expectation of anything in return from their students. They're just helping them to grow and develop and cultivate wisdom. And then the students don't have any expectations either, and they're just helping other people to get access to the teachings. And now the wisdom is being cultivated, and everybody's experiencing more and more improvement in their life. So this has been going on since the lifetime of the Buddha. This is the mutual support that he taught, because it ensured that his teachings continued in the world. If you can imagine, if he was teaching certain people and they were getting closer and closer to enlightenment, and let's just say they had like a business on the side, right? And now this business on the side needed help, but also a student needed help. Well, if they're getting their resources from the business and that's how they sustain their life, then they're going to pay attention to the business and make sure the business is taken care of. They're not going to necessarily pay attention to the student. So the Buddha taught people who are going to choose to teach his teachings to basically step away from society in terms of career pursuits and things like that, and now to dedicate your life to sharing the teachings with other people, so that now that person doesn't eat unless they're actually sharing wisdom in order to be able to help people get to enlightenment. So the Buddha kind of put this mutual support into the way that his teachings come into the world. So this has been going on since his lifetime. So this is everything that I have to share on this topic, but I usually kind of pause here at the end, and I just would like to share one thing with you guys as you've been coming here regularly, and maybe you continue to come here over the years, or you might see me in other places in the world teaching. Understand that you can come and learn with me at any time, any place, and there is never any expectation of me that you should be giving me something. I'm sharing these teachings with you out of loving kindness and compassion, because I know if you can make your way to enlightenment, that's the very best thing that could ever happen to you in your entire life. I share this teaching with you because this is what you're going to need to understand as part of your practice to get to enlightenment. Is you're going to need to practice generosity, and you're going to need to practice a certain amount of merit. But just understand that this doesn't come with any expectation that you will practice merit with me, that you're welcome to come here or anywhere else that I ever teach, and there's never an expectation that you will ever give me anything at all. You're welcome to come here and learn at no cost, whether it's the books, the videos, the podcasts, the personal guidance, the courses, retreats. You can learn anytime you would like at no cost whatsoever. I never have any expectation that you will ever give me anything whatsoever. But if at any point you do decide that you would like to support what it is that I'm doing here, just understand that I'm very appreciative of that, because what I do here to be able to help you guys to learn, and other people as well, it does cost something, right? During lifetime of the Buddha, he didn't accept gold and silver because he lived right alongside of his students, and his students would take care of his food, and they would help him with clothing, and they would give him a place to sleep and things like this. Where nowadays students do offer their time, effort, energy, but they also offer financial support sometimes too, in order to pay for things like electric and water and meditation cushions and things like this. So if you've ever done anything, whether it's taking out the trash or sweeping or cleaning a bathroom, or maybe you've put a little bit of a financial contribution in order to help us to be able to fund the center and stuff like that, I'd like to just share with you my thank you and my appreciation for your gratitude and for your generosity, that I appreciate your support. But just know that I never have an expectation that you will ever support me. There's certain people in the world that I'm able to teach and help them, and they will never be able to practice generosity with me. And that's okay. I get emails sometimes from people that are on islands on the coast of Africa. They're off the continent of Africa, and they write me emails and they say, David, I don't have a library on my island, and I don't even have access to books, but I have the internet, and I was able to download your books, and I'm very appreciative that you make these available at no cost. Thank you so much. Right? I've had people write me from impoverished villages in different places of the world, and they tell me that they live on $50 a month, and that's how much that they live their life on, this $50 a month. And they're never going to practice any kind of generosity with me because they're in such a far distant place. They're never going to be able to fly here to Thailand and learn and to be able to take out the trash or sweep the floor or give me any kind of financial support. And that's okay, because I can still help that person and I can still teach them, right? So that's why I do what I do, because I'm interested in seeing more and more people get access to the teachings. And then when people do support me, it allows me to actually teach those people who aren't able to support. And that's okay, because my interest to help you and help you to progress on this path has no expectations of anything in return. I'm here to help you, whether I'm in Chiang Mai or any other place that you see me traveling to. Whenever I travel, I make sure that those people set it up in such a way that if I'm going to teach, that there's no requirement for anything. So like when I'm going to the USA next week, I'm going to be teaching a total of about 10 different courses during the time that I'm there, and they're all available at no cost. Right? So anybody can join whatever it is that I'm doing. So I would like to just take a moment and say thank you for anything that you've done, whether you've taken out trash, whether you've swept the floor, anything like that. Thank you for contributing to what we do here. But just know that there's never an expectation that you would do something. But I really do appreciate that. Okay? So do you guys have any question here on merit? Yes, ma'am.
Hello. Before we made a donation, do we need to make sure that the one receive the donation is free from craving, desire, and attachment? If someone is craving for something from me, should I stop making the donation to help him to eliminate the craving?
Yes. Yeah. You would, if there's somebody has an expectation of you to give them something, it would actually be better for you to not give that thing. In fact, I can tell you this, my son, he helps me with editing the podcast that I publish. And for a long time, he used to do it just out of generosity. But then after a while, as he was getting older, I was like, he probably needs a little bit of spending money. So I'll kind of give him a little bit of spending money. So I started giving him like a small amount of money to help me with the podcast, right? And it comes from y'all's donations, which is contributing to me being able to provide that podcast to you. So the students are able to support me to be able to share the teachings. And just a couple of weeks ago, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, I noticed he kept asking me for the money, right? Because there was a time where I didn't pay him. He gave me the podcast and then I didn't pay him. And he was like, Dad, when are you going to give me that money? When are you going to give me the money? He would come check with me. And I just intentionally didn't give it to him for like 2 weeks. And then eventually he stopped asking me for it. And then I knew, okay, he's let go of his craving, right? So you would be wise to do this, where I wasn't trying to force him to do anything or impose anything on him. I was just making a decision that created an environment that allowed him to let go of his craving. So wherever you see these kinds of things, you can practice in a way based on the wisdom that you know about this path. And this is the most loving and kind and compassionate thing you could do for that person, is create an environment where they have the ability to let go of their craving, desire, attachment. So you might not be able to tell whether someone's free of craving, anger, and ignorance, especially if you haven't spent time with them very much. If you see they're frustrated and angry and irritated or annoyed, or, they're discontent, if students are asking questions and they get annoyed by that, they're not free of craving, desire, attachment. But remember, the Buddha also talks about someone who's practicing to get into one of those 4 stages. So if you see someone making valid efforts towards improvement, then that would be a person that you'd be interested to support too, right? So they might not be 100% free of it, but they were maybe making their way towards it. If you had someone that's completely free of craving, anger, and ignorance, they're enlightened, and that would be wise to make offerings to them, because now you're going to be able to get that wisdom. That's the actual merit that you're receiving. But if it's someone who's on the way, you can still benefit from that too. But if you see that at any point in time somebody's wanting or expecting something from you, it would be unwise to give that to them. It's like feeding a monster, and now this monster gets bigger and bigger. Of course, an enlightened being isn't going to have any expectations of anything from you, but someone on the way to enlightenment, they might have some expectations, and that's where you would like to modify what you do. In fact, you might even be in some situations where you're unsure whether somebody is attached to what it is that you're doing. And what I suggest people to do is implement impermanence. So even like here, what I do is I take some of the donations you guys give me and I give it to the temple for water and electric and all these kinds of things, right? So when I first started teaching here and they invited me to teach, they never said that I was required to pay anything. They just said, hey, come teach and here's a classroom. And I said, well, obviously, if I'm teaching here, there's going to be electric and water. I would like to contribute to help you guys pay for that. And they said, well, it's up to you if you would like to do that or not. We don't expect it, but if you'd like to, you're more than welcome. So when I first started teaching, I started, making offerings from the donations that you guys give me to them. But what I do, even to this day, is I change it every month. It's like different amounts. So they never get used to me like sending the same amount of money every single month. So their mind doesn't get attached to it. So it kind of goes up and down and up and down and up and down. There's all this impermanence in what I give to them. So that's kind of wise to do, that if you're giving something to somebody and you're doing that regularly, is to change it so that their mind doesn't get attached to it. It's kind of like, here's another example. Like when I first started teaching here, the dogs were aggressive and they used to come and bark at me, and they even bit me a couple of times and stuff like this. So I decided to start practicing generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom with the dogs. And I started buying them food, and I started giving them food. About 3 times a week, I used to feed them. I would make up these big bowls of food and I'd go take it to them. And of course, slowly but surely, they started becoming very friendly with me, right? Because they're practicing conditional love. They don't practice unconditional love. They're conditional, right? There's no such thing as conditional love, but that's what they were practicing. Is you give me something, I will like you. You don't give me anything, I don't like you. So I did this for a while where I was feeding them 2 or 3 times a week. But then I started noticing that when I would show up, they would come running to me because they knew, like, oh my gosh, this guy's going to feed me. And sometimes they'd be waiting at the steps outside. When I would show up, they'd be waiting for me when I got here. And I was like, they're getting attached. So then I started, spreading it out and not really making them food as frequently as I was. And then now I don't actually give them any food at all. I just kind of rub them and talk nice to them and stuff like that. So even with animals and humans, their mind can easily get attached to what it is you're doing. So you would like to kind of mix it up sometimes. Even in your relationship with your husband, there's probably certain things that you do. I don't know if you maybe bring him a cup of tea, or you cook him food, or I don't know if you do his laundry or things like this. But if you do any of these kinds of things, you would like to break it up and insert some impermanence where he's also able to do those kinds of things, so his mind doesn't get attached to you as a partner, and that you're going to do all these things for him. Because then someday when you're on a business trip or you're sick or some other thing like this, then his mind has difficulties because you're not providing him that thing, and his mind got attached to it. Yep.
Hello. Okay. Sorry, do you mind just recapping the 3 factors of the recipient? So the first one was discerning whether they're free of cravings. What were the other 2?
Craving, anger, and ignorance.
Okay. All 3 of those.
Yep.
Okay. Thank
That
you.
would be ideal, because that would be an enlightened being.
Okay.
And now that person having gotten to enlightenment, they'd be able to help you get to enlightenment. And the way you're going to know that is based on the condition of their mind. That you're not judging this person. You're not looking down on them, right? That's not what you're doing. You're just practicing discernment. So like I've been to temples before where I've seen ordained practitioners smoking cigarettes, or I've seen them purchasing lottery tickets, or I've seen them hitting animals, right? They're not anywhere near enlightenment doing those kinds of things, right? They're still having craving, anger, and ignorance, right? So those aren't the type of people that the Buddha recommends that you support. In fact, we might not even consider those people monks. They're the donkey thinking that they're a cow, right? Instead, you would like to use discernment and kind of observe this person. You're not just interested in just giving to someone you don't even know, right? You would like to have conversation with this person and get to know this person. And not that you want or expect anything from this person, but you would just like to see what their practice is like. And it's going to require a certain amount of wisdom from you to know what the teachings are in order to be able to decide whether this is a person you'd like to make offerings to. Where here in Thailand, Thai people will generally make offerings to anybody and everybody. This is one of the reasons why we see so much complacency among the ordained practitioners, because Thai people are very dedicated and determined that they will make offerings to everybody and anybody. They'll just see monks walking down the street and they'll make an offering to this person, right? But that breeds complacency, because now the person isn't necessarily practicing well the teachings really well, and they're still getting offerings to support themselves. Whereas if people practice what the Buddha taught, if you were an ordained practitioner who wasn't practicing the teachings well, you wouldn't be getting offerings, and you would no longer be able to support yourself as an ordained practitioner. You'd have to disrobe and go back to the household life because you're not getting any food. You're not getting any clothing. You're not getting any support. And that's exactly what the Buddha was trying to create, that it's only the people who are practicing the teachings the closest that is getting the support. And those people are going to flourish and bring the teachings into the world. And the people who aren't practicing the teachings well, they're going to end up disrobing because they're not getting any food. They're not getting any necessities to sustain their life. And that's exactly what we would like to see occur. But in an environment like Thailand, where people are just giving to anybody and everybody, that's not the case. And that's why we see a lot of complacency in the ordained community.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yep. All right. You have a question?
I was just kind of wondering about like the previous screen where kind of like material goods versus the teaching. So I was just kind of wondering about like the example where you get a bag of chips and you're with a bunch of people and you give them a material good, you're sharing a material good chips, right? Or you don't do that and you're just trying to share your teachings. But I assume that like the teaching company had to come to you to get the teaching rather than you going around trying to teach people, right? So,
yeah. So it's not one or the other. It's not like you give food or teachings, right? You can actually do all of these things, right? So you can share your clothing, you can share your financial resources, you can share your food, but you can also share the teachings. And sharing the teachings might be that you donate some books to a library, or because that's merit too, right? It's not just necessarily giving it to a temple, right? You could give books to a library or give books to a prison, right? Or maybe you support a teacher to come into a community, like these people who are bringing me to America. They're practicing a significant amount of merit because they're paying for my flight, they're paying for my food, they're paying for my living expenses. They've actually rented facilities for me to go around and actually teach in. They're doing all this merit to be able to bring the teachings into the community. So you can practice generosity with food and clothing and shelter, and you can also practice generosity with the teachings as well. But the Buddha is just saying that sharing the teachings is the highest quality of sharing that you could ever give, or gift that you could ever give, because it's helping people eliminate discontentedness and get to enlightenment. Okay. I don't see any other questions. I just see some hello and good mornings from the UK on YouTube. All right. I don't see anything else. All right. So now I'll just share one more thing with you guys, not about this topic, but this topic of continued support. That from this point forward, our course is going to kind of slowly come to an end, right? Tomorrow we've got the field trip that we're going to do, but you guys have been learning some different things, and nobody's gotten to enlightenment in 4 or 5 days. That's not the way it's going to work. It's going to be multiple years of training your mind to get to enlightenment. So you're going to need continued support beyond this course. So here's the ways that you guys can continue to learn. There's books, audiobooks, videos, podcasts, and quizzes that you can access all of this stuff from our website, and it's all available to you at no cost. You can take in-person and online classes, courses, and retreats. That's also available to you through our website. There's ongoing programs, both in-person and online, where the group learning program is every Sunday and Wednesday at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. Thai time. And that takes the first book of our book series, and I go chapter by chapter every Sunday. It's a 7-month program where it's really great that you have taken this course. You could easily go into that group learning program. This Sunday, I'm actually going to be teaching the Eightfold Path. So we're in chapter 5. And the first 2 months of the group learning program is essentially what you learned here in this particular course. So you guys could easily go into that group learning program and continue from there. And it's done live. It's Sunday and Wednesday at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. Or if you can't make the live class through Facebook, YouTube, Zoom, or here at the temple, you can watch the recording if you would like to watch the recording. Then students can also move into this Pali Canon and English study group. This meets each Saturday at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. You can meet here at 9 a.m. or online. And then at 9 p.m., it's just online. And what we do is we explore volumes 2 through 13. And this is a 1.5-year program where we're gradually making our way through all of those discourses of the Buddha. It's more of a study group where all the other programs that I teach, it's me teaching for 15, 20, 30 minutes, opening up for questions, teaching for 15, 20, 30 minutes, opening up for questions, where the Pali Canon English study group, it's more of a study group. And you guys could easily go into that program too, because you've had this foundation now, you could easily go into that. So some people will go from this program, the foundation and the path to enlightenment, into the group learning program. Some people will go into the Pali Canon English study group. Some people actually do both. What you'll find with the Pali Canon and English study group is if you come to the one in the morning, I usually only cover about 2 or 3 discourses of the Buddha, where in the evening, when I teach at 9 p.m. Thai time, we actually study 10 discourses, which is where people who are studying with me the most, they usually kind of go into that class. So if you're really interested in studying with the original words of the Buddha, everything you're studying is based in the original words of the Buddha, but that particular program is really directly learning with the words of the Buddha. Then there's personal guidance that you guys can actually get help from me in multiple ways. You can ask questions in classes. You can post in our Facebook group and I will help you there. You can send me a private message, or you can schedule personal guidance from our website, and then we can meet online. If you'd like to meet in person, all you need to do is talk to me or send me a message and say, hey, David, can I meet you at the temple? Or, hey, David, can you meet me at this restaurant? Or would it be possible to meet you at this smoothie shop or this park or something like that? So you can meet with me in person or online. And all of this is available to you at no cost, as I've been sharing with you. There's an unlimited amount of time to be able to learn, right? I'm not ever going to ask you for anything. So it's one thing learning in classes, but it's a whole other thing that now you have to relate it to your day-to-day situations. So that's where personal guidance comes in, that you've been learning in the classes, you've been reading the books, and now you've got some situations that you'd like to talk through with me. And now you kind of share what's going on in your life, and now I will help you. It's kind of like a life coach, or some people might think of it like a mentor or a therapist or something like that, so that you can figure out how to relate the teachings to your day-to-day life. I'll never tell you what you should or shouldn't do, but instead I'll just listen to what it is that you're doing and what you're experiencing and what decisions you need to make. And then I'll say, okay, well, if you make the decisions this way, here's what you'll experience. If you make the decisions this way, here's what you'll experience. And then you make the choice for yourself of what you think is best. You can just think of me as like an advisor or guidance. It's like a tour guide. The teachers are pointing out for you what it is that you need to learn, and each student is choosing to learn those things. Then there's a Facebook group that sometimes people like to go in there and they ask questions. I'm the only one who answers your question, but what students do is they will either ask questions or they will read the answers of other students' questions. And you can learn that way too. Some people who don't really use Facebook very much, they still go in here. They will just open an account and they might not even make private posts or personal posts. They sometimes just even put like a flower or a rainbow or some clouds or something as their profile picture. And then they go in and they just kind of like ask questions, or they read other people's questions and see the answers. So there's that ability to learn that way as well. So these are all the different options of how you can get continued support on the path to enlightenment. And here's the 2 ongoing programs that you can learn from. So do you guys have any questions on this? No questions? Okay. So as we go to lunch, I would like to share with you guys that yes, I've been practicing generosity with you guys all week long, and I will continue to practice generosity with you all week long and all month long and all year long and all the way till the end of this life. I'll be sharing these teachings with you guys. And that's the very best gift that I could ever give you. But at the end of a class like this, I actually like to give you an actual material gift. If you guys would like this, you're more than welcome to have it. These pictures that I use of the Buddha, where he's looking very much like a human being, this is actually how the Buddha looked during his lifetime. The statues that you see of the Buddha typically are not what the Buddha actually looked like during his lifetime, because these statues were not created by people who actually lived during his lifetime. They didn't know how he actually looked. So these statues where he has a crown on his head and he's wearing these fancy elaborate clothing and stuff like that, he actually didn't dress like that during his lifetime. He actually dressed with these rag robes and he shaved his hair. He looked like a human being, just like you and I. So what I like to do at the end of a class like this is offer you one of these pictures. It's like a small little poster about this big. And if you'd like to take this, you're more than welcome to take it. If you hang it up on your wall, maybe it'll remind you to meditate. It might remind you to practice the teachings a little bit closer. Maybe when you're talking on the phone and you're noticing this frustration come up and you look and you get a glance of that picture, you're like, oh yeah, Mom, I love you so much. Thank you so much for giving me this life. Or maybe it'll just give you a little bit more oomph to practice that right speech that you need to practice, right? So if you take one of these, great, you can have it for yourself. If you'd like to give it away to somebody, you can do that too. I don't have any expectation of whether you should take this or not take it or what you should do with it, but it's up here in this little tub right here and it's rolled up. It happens to look like a diploma. So maybe you can think of it like that you're kind of turning the tassel and maybe you're graduating from your class or something like that. So at the very least, what this thing can do for you is maybe it can help you to humanize a Buddha. And you can see that this Buddha, he's a human just like you and I. Sometimes people put Buddhas up on the pedestal so high that they think, oh, the Buddha got to enlightenment, but I can't get to enlightenment. He's different than me, right? But what I'm interested in doing is humanizing a Buddha so that you can see that he was human just like you and I, and like he got to enlightenment, you can too. There's no difference. The only difference is that he chose to enter into this life of homelessness. And right now you're choosing to live this life as a household practitioner. You can get to enlightenment just like the Buddha did. And it's helpful to humanize a Buddha so that you understand that he was human just like you and I. Because sometimes you see him in all these pictures and he looks so serious and solemn. But an enlightened being is happy, they're cheerful, they're not just sitting around meditating all the time. Just like the Buddha is a human being like you and I guarantee you that the Buddha used to fart. I guarantee you he used to pick his nose, because how else do you get those boogers out of the nose? That's like the best way to do it, right? There's hasn't been any other way invented that's even better than that, right? So a Buddha is a human being just like you and I, and he does all the same things that you and I do, like farting and pooping and peeing and all those other things. So if you'd like one of these pictures, you're more than welcome to have one. And if you'd like to keep it for yourself, or maybe there's been a person at your hotel or at the restaurant that has been helpful to you, maybe you'd like to give one to them, you're more than welcome to take as many as you like, actually, and give them away or keep them for yourself. So thank you for your dedication to learning and growing on the path. What I'm going to do is take a break here for lunch. It's basically 12 o'clock. At 1:30, we're going to get back together, and then we're going to continue from there. I'm going to be sharing how to integrate the teachings that you've learned this week into your day-to-day life. I'll share an activity with you, and we'll talk about the field trip tomorrow so you can get some details on that, and then we'll just kind of finish it up from there. Okay, so enjoy your lunch, and I'll see you guys at 1:30. Okay, all right. Mm-hmm.